Thank you, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of Techcon 2013. A big turnout today. This is great. Thank you for coming down today. For those of you who came yesterday, thank you very much for that. We really do appreciate you joining us here. And hopefully yesterday you saw some great presentations, some great content, and got real value from coming to spend a day with us. And I think through the rest of this week, we have an excellent schedule of material, and you'll get some really good insight into what's going on around this incredibly unique and vibrant ecosystem that we have in this ARM partnership. So, really appreciate you coming out. Now, I've been the CEO of ARM for roughly 4 months now, and people are asking me, how's it going, Simon? And it's an awesome job to be doing. I'm having a blast. One of the questions I get is, ARM has been so successful, over the last decade or so, as mobility has grown. ARM's been really successful in mobile. Simon, what's going to be the thing that defines your tenure as ARM? Because innovation's slowing down. Everybody seems fixated at the moment that innovation is slowing down, particularly in mobile, in smartphones. Innovation's slowing down. I don't think that's the case, and I actually think over the next 5 to 10 years, what we're going to see is that we really are at today on the brink of a new era of innovation. What we've seen is that devices have become less expensive. Silicon devices have become less expensive because of all the work that goes on to drive cost out and drive efficiencies up. Manufacturing things has become, end devices has become less expensive. Developing software has become less expensive. Using the cloud, using lots of online computing has become really accessible. And what I think that's going to do is drive this new era of innovation, and I think we're going to see some really interesting things come about as a result of that. So with those barriers being lowered, I think that creates huge business opportunities. I think we're going to see interesting devices, interesting services, and that's going to be good for businesses of all sizes. Big businesses, and particularly, I think we're going to see the spawning of many small businesses that take advantage of this era of innovation that we're going into. So that's really what I want to spend today talking about, innovation. And there are lots of stories, especially here in Silicon Valley, about companies being founded in garages and in basements, small companies being started up by entrepreneurs who see an opportunity to get into a market, think about what to do, think about the resources they've got available, and go and do something. So there are lots of garage stories around, and the picture here really represents the most famous of those. This is the HP garage in Palo Alto, just up the road here, and it really is one of the most famous stories about innovation. Now, the reason I chose to show that is it's a couple of blocks away from the house where I live, and whenever I walk by this on the way back from downtown, I'm struck by this thought about how innovation is changing, and how when Bill and Dave started their company, they were thinking about what could be. And I think we're in an era where we need to think some more about what could be. We've got this fantastic set of opportunities based on all these technologies that are becoming available. And I think just like Bill and Dave did when they founded HP, there's a big opportunity for a kind of return to the garage, a return to a lot of innovation. So when people talk about innovation, they like to look at the mobile industry. And as I said, people are kind of fixated at the moment that innovation's slowing down there. I don't think that's the case, because as we look forwards, I think there's many, many ways in which new devices, products, services can come about. And I think when we look back at history, we can see examples of other industries which appear to have slowed down, but have actually continued to go through great innovation. So to provide some historical content, let's have a look at one such example. So the arrival of the car just over 100 years ago really did cause a seismic shift. It caused a seismic shift in society, a seismic shift in transportation. It enabled people to suddenly get from A to B, where A and B could be much further apart than they could do with walking in a day. The arrival of the car drove new technologies, it drove new businesses, and it really did change economies. It also, as a maybe slightly unfortunate side effect, kind of kicked off the benchmarking industry. Around about 1895, people started racing cars and seeing how they compared against each other. And of course, today we live in an era where people like to benchmark everything. So it caused a lot of changes. It caused a lot of changes in manufacturing. And those innovations that went on there, those techniques that were developed, helped lower cost. And that had a number of side effects. By lowering the cost significantly, by orders of magnitude, it meant that the people who actually made these cars could afford to buy them, and that created a big consumer market for demand for these products. And so that created a kind of virtuous circle, demand going up, volume going up, prices coming down, further efficiencies being gained. And that the effect of more and more people owning cars caused other shifts on society. The combination of the utility of the car began to move things and people around, and the shift it caused in the way people viewed their leisure time and what they did with it led to a number of adjacent industries alongside the automobile industry itself. One thing we saw was car personalization. Things like bumper stickers and fluffy dice. Anyone want to confess to having owned some fuzzy dice in their car? No? So it caused personalisation, and of course, today there are lots of ways you can personalise your car. If you're going to buy a new car, many options are available to you. And it also, more interestingly, I think, caused the creation of separate industries that relied on the fact that you owned a car. As car ownership became more and more popular, other industries crept up that really assumed that you had a car in the first place. And it's almost at the point today, especially living here, that if you haven't got one, just going to the supermarket and doing a lot of shopping can become difficult. So the car became much more than just something that allowed you to get from A to B. It created all of these other industries, and it created a change in which people interacted with each other and interacted with the world. So these changes kind of sound familiar with some other industries that we look at today and we kind of live and breathe. But I'll come on to that in a moment. Now, over the 100 or so years that the automobile industry has been in existence, we've seen a kind of Darwinian effect going on. Technology has improved a lot, technology has evolved a lot, and there have been winners and losers along the way. Those people that kind of stick to their old ways of doing things kind of tend to die out. Those people who adapt tend to prosper. And of course, at all times along the way, over the last 100 or so years, there have been new entrants into this market because it's big. Back in 1899, there were 30 car companies here in the US, and they produced 2,500 cars between them. That's not very much. As the market grew, though, over the next decade from that, there were another 500 companies that came into the market. Now today, most of those obviously don't exist, but it's an example of how there's a mushrooming of the number of people building cars. By 1913, 500,000 cars were made here in the US. That's approximately a 200x growth in a period of 14 years. Here we are 100 years later, and we're still seeing innovation in cars. People think that they're fairly stagnant devices, but you look at companies like Tesla. They're changing the way we think about how we power a car to get from A to B and the side effects that cars cause. Companies like Zipcar, who are changing our views on whether we should in fact own a car in the first place. Why don't we just borrow one when we actually need it? Maybe that's a better way of doing it. So we're seeing innovations going on in the device itself, in the business models, in the usage cases. And I think that shows a good way for how other technologies can evolve, even if they seem fairly stagnant. So despite the fact that the car was a 19th century invention, fundamentally, it's still evolving. And I think when we look at mobility, I think again we're going to see a lot of innovation and evolution go on over the next couple of decades, and maybe for the next 100 years. Now, mobile feels like it's been with us for a long time. There's about a billion smartphones deployed right now. Through this year, we're expecting another billion phones to be sold. But that's relatively small compared to the population of the planet. And I think over time, more and more people will get access to smart mobile devices, and that's going to cause lots of changes that I'm going to come on to. So again, to give a bit of a historical perspective on how far mobility has come, let's take a look at this. So we can see the devices have changed a lot over the last few years. So quick show of hands here. Anyone want to confess to having owned all of those phones? A third? Seriously? I reckon there's a few people who've owned quite a lot of those. I was looking through again. Yeah, I had that one, that one looks weird. And I think we're going to see a lot more devices as we go forwards here. So I think we really are in the infancy of this era of mobility, where devices, services, products, they're going to change. We're all used to having these connected devices, but I think the things that these devices connect to are going to change quite fundamentally, and that is going to have a big impact on our lives and on society. So I think there's a lot of parallels with the automobile industry, which at times has appeared pretty stagnant, but in fact keeps changing. So as I said earlier, people are kind of fixated on how innovation in mobile devices has slowed down, but there's a lot of innovation still going on. Companies like Xiaomi in China are building new products and trying to excite new customers to buy their devices with personalization. Here in the US, there's a company called Blue who are focused on producing very low-cost Android-based devices. Again, lots of colors, lots of different personalization, so it becomes your device. It's the kind of fuzzy dice of the mobile world. So, with all that innovation, just like with the car, cost is coming down. Some of these products now cost, you can buy a smartphone for $50. Tablets particularly, the cost is being driven out, and that's causing people to be able to use tablets in different ways. Pricing's getting to a low enough point now where governments in developing countries are deciding to give tablets to their pupils in schools to change the way that education is delivered to them. And that can only happen when the cost gets low enough. But it's at that point, $50 tablets are cheap enough to be given away to kids in schools. And that's a fundamental shift from where we were just a few years ago. So with the devices getting cheaper, again, there's a parallel with businesses which assume you have a mobile device. Not just that you have access to the internet, but that you have access to the mobile internet. Let's have a look at some of those examples and how, particularly, some things in your day-to-day life can get made easier. So let's start with just booking a taxi. Now, if you're up in San Francisco, taxis are actually quite hard to get, quite hard to find. In places like Austin, taxis are quite hard to find. So to solve these problems, there's a number of services that have sprung up which rely on your mobile device being with you the whole time, providing an easier means to find a cab. You can pull up the app on the screen, you can see where the nearest cab is, you can pull up a picture of the driver, you can see how he's been rated by other people that have been in his car. And if you've pre-registered your credit card, then when you get out of the car at the end of the journey, the money is just taken off you, you don't have to worry about cash, you're good, you're done, off you go with your life. It's quite neat. I've used some of these services, they exist all around the world, and it really does help solve a problem at times. So that's one example. Another one could be just the seemingly very mundane act of unlocking a door and getting into your house. There's a company we've been talking to recently called August, who are creating a smart lock. Now this is a lock that just kind of retrofits onto your existing door. It uses a Bluetooth LE to allow the phone to connect with the lock and to let you in. So you just walk up to your house, touch the lock, in you go. Now that seems like a fairly mundane thing. How hard really is it to get the key out and open the door? But if you're like me and you get a phone message late at night from your daughter saying she's forgot to take her key with her, then this could be quite useful. And in fact, just this weekend, I found an example where I really wished I had this thing now. I do have one on order. Because the furnace in my garage stopped working. So we had to book a service appointment with a service company, and we get this 4-hour window where the guy might turn up. So on Monday, my wife had to hang around the house for 4 hours, waiting for the guy to show up. Fortunately, he did. But it would have been much more convenient to say, I'm going to grant you access to my garage between these times for you to turn up and do the work that you need to do. And with this style of device that August are putting together, you can do that. You can grant permission to somebody else to access, to unlock your door for some period of time, and you can retract it. When you're fed up with your house guest, you can deny access. So, seemingly mundane thing, but kind of can be revolutionised. And there are other products and services that can kind of go around that, which are really interesting, very interesting company app. One other area that these mobile devices are changing and interacting with is in the field of health monitoring. Now, lots of examples here. This one, this company Proteus, quite interesting. What they're trying to do is help people in the management of sort of daily consumption of medicines. So they're actually producing devices where, if you've got a collection of medicines that you need to take, one of the devices has actually got a chip inside it. Now, coupled with that is the patch that's stuck on you, and coupled with that is the application on your smart mobile device that you might have, some caregiver might have. Maybe if you're helping an aged parent, you might have this, and it enables you to check that medication is being taken properly. So it relies on a mobile device, relies on really small, really low power semiconductor devices, and is helping with the management of medicines. So we're getting devices now that are, in fact, ingestible. Again, it's a big change that's happening because of the mobile device. It's not just about making a phone call, updating your Facebook status. Who's done that today? I won't be offended if you're doing it now. In-call presentation. It's more than watching videos about dancing cats on YouTube. It's about all of these other things. It's about interacting with the world at large and making some things that you just have to do every day a little bit easier. So this modern mobile experience is changing. And what we're going to see, I think, is a growing network of devices that your phone becomes the controller of. Your phone is going to become, your smart device is going to become the focal point for the interaction with lots of other things. This network is going to expand from a kind of broad network where communications comes to you to a much more personal network where you interact with other things and you are able to access new products and services. And as we see this evolve, the internet is going to evolve into the Internet of Things. There are many, many connected devices, and that will drive new products, new services, and new opportunities for everyone in the technology space. I think this is a really interesting transformation that we're on the verge of going into. Now, the side effect of this is data. And your average consumer doesn't really think about the amount of data that their mobile device, all of these devices that they're interacting with, are actually generating or consuming. But as technologists, we think about this a lot. And when you look at the statistics, you see that the consumption, the generation of data is going up in a quite staggering way. Mobile data, global mobile data, grew by over 50% this year to a staggering 900 petabytes per month. Now, petabyte, as you can see there, is a one with a whole load of zeros after it. It's a lot of data. But it's growing rapidly, over 50% last year alone. Now, Cisco, looking at this a lot, they kind of have a vested interest for this data growing, and there's nothing wrong with that. And what they're predicting is by 2017, mobile data is going to grow by a factor of 10. And that's going to form a component of around 8 zettabytes of annual server data, so data that servers are processing. And the zettabyte is one with even more zeros on the back of it. So when you think about the network, when you think about how we're going to deal with this data, the network that we have today, just can't absorb orders and orders of magnitude more data. We're going to have to change the network. The network itself is going to have to evolve, and that in itself is quite a big opportunity. The amount of silicon content in networks is large, and it's going to grow. So the network's got to evolve. And when we think about how mobile devices have grown, what we've seen is there's a whole range of solutions. There are different products for different markets. One size does not fit all. There are high-performance devices. There are lower-performance devices. Diversity has been the name of the game in mobile. And I think when we look at the way that the network's going to evolve, again, we're going to see a much more diverse network. Instead of one that's dominated by large base stations, where all the data comes into a few points, we're going to see a much more distributed network of macro cells and small cells, and Wi-Fi offload, other ways for data to get in and out of the network and to this mobile endpoint, which is going to dominate a lot of the traffic that's put across this network. Now, to make that happen requires a lot of collaboration. It requires a lot of software. We've seen here this week at Techcon the Linaro forums going on. That's a great example where companies are coming together to work on issues that are required to solve some of these problems and collaborating on software solutions. And there's a whole branch of Linaro just focused on networking. So we're going to need to evolve the network. We're going to need to increase its bandwidth. We're going to need to lower the latency of data transfer, to the cloud and back again. We're going to need that for the mobile internet itself, and it's going to become critical for the Internet of Things. When you think about the growth of mobile itself, everyone, especially countries like the US and here in Silicon Valley, we think about high-end devices. But actually there is a fantastic opportunity, an enormous opportunity, to put smartphones in the hands of billions of more people, and that's happening as price points get lower. Now, when you think about the data that's being generated, you think about the number of photos that are taken and shared and stored. When you give a smartphone to everybody on the planet, just think about how that's going to explode. So if we don't fix the network, if we don't evolve the network, then it's going to grind to a halt. Now, when we think about the data generated by the Internet of Things, that's going to compound the problem. So we need to work on that, and we need to work on that quite quickly. So the Internet of Things, let's talk about that for a while. As a term, the Internet of Things has been around as a terminology since about 1999. And it was used to describe this concept of something that has an embedded processor, a sensor, and some connectivity, so it can tell what's going on around it and communicate with some other service to move that data and to extract some information from that data and then provide some action based on what's going on. So that's a very simple term, but it's kind of expanded and it can mean many things to many people. So as the Internet of Things becomes a kind of hotter and hotter technology area, is it sensors in light bulbs? Is it watches? Is it industrial equipment? Is it something in your car? And is it something in the back of a truck? It's potentially a very confusing space. So we thought what we should do is pause for a moment and go and take a pulse on how industry views the Internet of Things right now. So to get a pulse on what the view on IoT is right now, what we did was commission a study. We went and partnered with the intelligence unit over at The Economist. They do some excellent work, excellent kind of academic analysis of problems and write in a really crisp and clear way. And by partnering with them, what we did was go and talk to about 800 different companies around the world in different industries, different geographies, very broad reach of investigation that went on. And we've put that together with The Economist into a report that you can now download off of arm.com. This went up there, I think, yesterday, and I recommend you all head on over to arm.com when I'm done, and download this, take a read through it, because it's a really interesting report showing a snapshot of how the world views IoT right now and how the world views the development of IoT over the next few years. Looks at the opportunities, looks at the challenges, so please go take a look at that. Now I'm going to give you my thoughts on the key kind of takeaways from that, but before we do so, here's a short video showing you some of the findings.
Just as the digital revolution and advent of the Internet have transformed our lives and businesses in the last 2 decades, the Internet of Things is set to affect a quiet and profound revolution in the ways we live and work in years to come. A report prepared by the Economist Intelligence Unit, sponsored by ARM, has surveyed 800 business leaders and revealed that more than 75% of them are actively exploring or using the Internet of Things. Globally, around 30% of companies are seeing their investment in the IoT increase by more than 10% year on year, while 3% of companies are doubling their investment. 2/5 of company boards are discussing the IoT every month. Nearly all business leaders believe their company will adopt the IoT, and most believe that those who are slow to adopt will fall behind their competitors. The Internet of Things is all about connecting our physical world. Microprocessors are already embedded into most significant manufactured goods. But when those items can communicate productively, they'll unite into a groundbreaking and disruptive business platform. As more things transmit information, we'll see a significant rise in data. But who owns the data, and how will it be shared? Companies, industry bodies, governments, and international organizations need a coordinated approach to creating common standards and modes of interoperability to prevent the creation of an internet of silos. ARM sensors and chips provide intelligence and connectivity in products from phones to fridges, from cars to our homes, transforming the way we communicate, work, and play. From the smallest sensor to the most complex network, the Internet of Things runs on ARM.
So that's going to give you a kind of overview of what you'll find in the report. As I say, it makes great reading. It's not ultra thick, so it's well worth the investment of time in having a look through that. And they've defined this index on the Internet of Things, which we'll see evolve over the years as we repeat this study. Over time, we'll see how business attitude changes towards IoT. So for me, there's a number of key takeaways from this study. First of all, I was just struck by how much is going on. Living in kind of tech land here, people talk about IoT the whole time, and you sometimes kind of have to step back and go, well, hang on a minute, is this really a global trend, or am I living in a microcosm where everyone's talking about technology the whole time? And one of the things that really struck me from this report was just how broad the research was going into IoT. So the companies that were surveyed here were from all industries. And this wasn't just tech firms being asked about the latest cool thing in tech. It was everything from healthcare companies, industrial companies, manufacturers. They're all looking at this space to see what it's going to do for them. So there's a global reach. And what was also interesting was how kind of uniform across the world the overall thinking was around IoT. The kind of statistical spread on people's view was very, very close across geographies and across industries. So very interesting. And what it shows is that most people are kind of going from a research phase into a planning phase. People have been looking at this space for a long time and are now actually planning to start doing something, start deploying IoT, start thinking about the products and services that they can leverage from this new technology, from this opportunity. And those opportunities are both internal within companies. There are lots of companies that are looking at how can I use IoT to make my business more efficient. And it seems there's an equal number of companies looking at how can I use IoT to create new products and services to generate more revenue for my business. There's pretty much equal split between the internal view and the external view of what IoT can do for business. One of the other key takeaways, and I'll come back to this, was about skills. Generally, this is a new space. Almost by definition, there's no one in it who's very experienced doing it because it is so new. And that is definitely seen as a barrier to the adoption of IoT and something that needs addressing. I'll come back to that. And as a result of all the different technologies that are going to come together, again, it's a key takeaway from the report that collaboration is going to be something that has to happen in order for IoT to become a reality. And all of this sounds quite hard. There are people who don't know what to do, and there's a whole bunch of people who ordinarily wouldn't talk to each other who need to get around the table to work out what to do. This doesn't sound like something that's easy to solve, but there was confidence that solutions are going to emerge in all of this because of the size of the industry. Again, we've seen, going back to the automobile industry, big business, companies do collaborate. You can go to a gas station and find that the hose at the end of the pipe does fit into your car. Someone somewhere defined a standard around that, and lots of people adhere to that standard. Different competing companies, different industries do have a history of getting together to solving problems to enhance the proliferation of the fundamental product. And I think that is going to happen here. So the one big thing, though, if there's one takeaway, one thing to remember from this is just how pervasive it is the view that IoT is going to make an impact on business. 3/4 of the companies that were surveyed, this is 800 companies globally, broke down 5 minutes before you arrived because that could have been prevented. We're going to see sensors deployed on equipment in hospitals and all over the place, trying to work out, is this thing in as good a state of health as it should be? And if it isn't, let's fix it before it becomes a problem. You'll see that in an industrial context. You can see it in your home as well. Why not have something monitoring the current draw of the motor of your dishwasher? And if it's going up a bit, probably something's gone wrong with the resistance in the motor and probably it's going to burn out. Why not get that fixed before it becomes a problem? We can see it in the home setting. We'll see it in a lot of industrial settings as well. And obviously in a hospital, just tracking where everybody is. You go to a hospital for some form of treatment, they stick one of those bands on you. But there's nothing to prevent that from becoming a smart band where they can track where you are in a hospital and call you in when it's time for whatever it is you've gone for. So in a healthcare setting, lots of opportunities to deploy these sensors so long as they're small and low cost and low power. Now, tracking all of this data and making sense of it is going to be tricky. Generating the data is relatively simple. Making some sense of it is much harder. And what you see if you can go back to the slide on the screen here, what you see in the bottom left is a dashboard of, in this case, energy data that's being produced to help visualize what's going on. And this is some data that's been produced by a company we've been working with called IntelliSense.io. And they are one of the pioneers in this space right now who are looking at how to visualize the data. As I say, getting the data is quite easy. Making sense of it is quite hard. So what IntelliSense.io have been doing is building some sensors. They've been deploying these in factories. And they've been building applications to take the data and help visualize it. So what they've been working on so far has been about energy management, water usage, and they have real deployments. This is actually going on right now. The data gets analyzed. There's a dashboard they've put together that somebody monitoring the state of this factory can do from their mobile device, their phone, their smartphone, their tablet. One other early mover looking at this issue of managing and visualizing data is a company called Xively, and it's another company we've been talking to recently. What they're trying to do is generically help with this issue of what do you do with the data once you've got it. Generating the data relatively simple, making sense of it quite hard. And what they've developed is a fairly standardized platform, or a platform that can be deployed in many different applications, where the data can be gathered, structured, and processed so that your application can then be written on top in a relatively straightforward way. Now, the approach that they've taken is they're not an expert on your problem. Your data is what you understand, whether you're extracting water from a reservoir or whatever it is your problem is, you're an expert in that. What they can help you with is structuring the data so that you can then bring your data to life for you in your context and understand what's going on. So Xively are there to help you. They can provide you with the software, they can provide you services to put all of this together. Great example of how companies are taking the entrepreneurial spirit, looking at an opportunity and trying to create a solution. Because putting this all together, as I said earlier, is quite difficult. It requires lots of skills. The promise of IoT is great, but it does need a lot of skills from differing disciplines to actually come together to make it a reality. Implementing IoT isn't about sensors, it's not about networking, it's not an analytics problem, it's all of those. And of course, finding someone who gets all of that, who is experienced and skilled in all of that, is quite rare. And probably there's a disproportionate number of people who understand all of that in this room right now. So if you want to feel good about your job prospects, I think things are looking good right now. IntelliSense and Xively are experts in what they do, but lots of expertise needs to come together. And one of the other takeaways from the report was when companies were asked about, what are you going to do? What are the steps you're planning to take? Feedback on the skills issue came across kind of loud and clear. People are looking at engaging with consultants, educating their staff, looking for people, and it talks in the report about a potential war for skills, a skill shortage in IoT, and a war for skills kind of breaking out. So again, if this is an area where you have expertise, things are looking good for you. There aren't fundamentally enough experts. You can see here, learning from what others are doing, seeking third-party help, come across score quite highly in the issues that companies are facing. So I'm not surprised that this came out, given how new. I'm not surprised that this finding comes out from the report, given how new this technology is. And I think between us all here, you look at the companies who are represented here at Techcon and the people who come to our event, a lot of the skills really are here. So what people need is a complete end-to-end solution. There are lots of companies who can make sensors. There are lots of people making really innovative, low-cost microcontrollers. There are people working on wireless standards. There are people working on the cloud. But it does require a complete end-to-end solution. Because there's going to be a lot of data and it's going to need managing. And that data, that big data, which is going to be huge, is going to come from the amalgamation of lots of little bits of data that come together through gateways directly onto the internet, directly up into the server. There's going to be a lot of data to work on. And it's going to have an impact, not just on the network, not just on the devices, but also on the servers themselves. And again, we've seen people looking at this issue and looking at how workloads on servers are changing and thinking about, well, should I build a server in a different way? And you'll see here at Techcon examples of the progress that's been made over the last 12 months in deploying servers that are more specific to the tasks that they're set out to do. This is another classic case where you don't just need one solution that can solve every problem. The workloads are changing, and analysing a sensor that's monitoring the energy consumed by a heat pump somewhere is very different from trying to calculate what the weather's going to do next week. And so different solutions are required from different problems so that we can overall have an energy efficient solution in the sensor, in the network, and up in the cloud. Just like in mobility, just like in cars, we're going to see different solutions. Diversity, again, is going to be the key. And putting all of this together, this complete end-to-end solution, does require a lot of collaboration, and it isn't something that one company can do. It does require an ecosystem, and that's what Techcon's all about, bringing an ecosystem together to work on big, hard problems. And I think deploying IoT is firmly in the category of hard problem. Now, many of the issues that I've kind of talked about this morning feel like kind of first world problems. Let's face it, letting the guy into my garage to fix the boiler, cooling down your car before you get in it. These are nice problems, but they really are kind of first world problems. I think, though, there are some much other more fundamental issues that IoT is ripe for actually addressing. So we look at how society is evolving. There are more and more people on the planet every day. The population of the Earth is forecasted to grow to 8 billion by 2020, and that's a lot more people. And not only is it more people, but what we're going to see is that the average member of society is richer, they're older, and increasingly they're living in cities which are very, very congested. People are talking about cities soon with 10 million people. In the future, 20 million people. Now, if you live in a city of 20 million, try finding a parking space. Things like IoT are going to help you get from A to B. And transportation, just moving all these people around in these increasingly congested environments, is going to be one area where IoT can really help. Just tracking people, tracking how trains run within cities, tracking how cars are moving around an increasingly congested infrastructure that only has some finite size constraints to it. As urbanisation grows, moving people around is going to be a big issue, and IoT offers a potential solution to that. It's not going to solve all the problems, but in all of these areas, IoT and technology can generally help make a big difference. As society evolves, we're going to be consuming more energy. In the rich countries, the OECD countries, that growth's relatively low. But you look outside of that, which is where most of that population growth is happening, the growth is much higher. And unless we want to go around building lots and lots of power stations, then we need to do something about it. And again, IoT technologies can help address that problem as well. They can help with much smarter consumption of energy. They can help create feedback to consumers about the energy that they're using. Can help just create a lot more intelligence in the network and help us develop smart power grids that people have been talking about for quite a long time. Healthcare, I showed the example earlier about the medicine that you take, and it tells you whether you did it or not, or tells somebody else whether you did it or not. That's one example where, as a result of growing population and the result of an aging population, we're going to need to deal with chronic healthcare issues, and the deployment of medical services is going to have to change. Now, IoT, tracking where you are, what you're doing, your actual state of health. Wearable devices which can monitor your vital signs and give your doctor a more accurate view of your state of health when you do actually turn up to see him. Can really help address this, can provide you better quality of life, and can provide for a more efficient deployment of medical services. Then in education, as the population is growing, as we are more congested, as we are dealing with issues of how we're going to feed everyone, having a more educated society I think is going to be quite a good thing. And that isn't quite a picture of my teenage daughter, but that's about as interested as she looks when it comes to going to school every day. Because deployment of education hasn't really changed very much. But as kids are using smart mobile devices more and more, why not use them for deployment of education? We're starting to see these things happening, but with the lowering of cost, with the advent of services that can be built in a cost-effective way on top of it, I hope that that is another area where technology and IoT can help. So there are many areas. Some of them are going to be nice and make our lives a little more convenient. And some of them I think are going to be very fundamental to us as the population of the Earth expands and as we deal with the issues that come as a side effect from that. Now, mobile connectivity, all these technologies may seem quite old, but as I've been describing in this presentation, I think we are at a point where more innovation is going to happen. Costs have become lowered. It's easier to hook things up. It's easy to get access to a massive online compute resource, a massive storage, and bring all of these together. And just like the automobile industry, I think there's a lot of innovation ahead of us. We've seen devices kind of go through periods of innovation, periods of stagnation maybe. I think with mobility we're on the verge of a lot of changes as the mobile device becomes the thing with which you interact with the rest of the world around. So I think there's a lot of innovation ahead of us, and that will be accelerated as costs go down, as bandwidth in the network goes up, and as latency comes down. Low latency really is a critical factor to providing a lot of services. So that's the technology side of it, though. I think all of that technology and the benefits of that are truly amplified through collaboration. And that is what Techcon really is all about. It's about collaboration. It's about bringing people together who are experimenting, who are trying new things out and sharing results and sharing ideas. In the technical sessions yesterday, there were lots of people talking about what they've been doing. And I encourage you all over the next couple of days to go and talk to as many people as possible. Go and talk to people in your industry about what they're doing, the results they've found, how you can help each other. I urge you all to go and find someone you've never met before and strike up a relationship there and see how you can help each other. Because I think what this ecosystem has already shown is that people are willing to help to move the entire market on, because it will only grow and create many opportunities for everyone. So that's what Techcon is about. It's about this kind of spirit of the garage. And I think we've already seen in the presentation here some pioneers in IoT, some people who are looking at this market and going, this is new, this is big, I've got an idea, I can put it together quickly, I can deploy it quickly because of the way that technology as a whole has evolved. And one of the best things about my job is going around and talking to people who are doing this. I get to go and chat to people making door locks and sensors and networks and all of this, and it's fantastic to hear about what people are doing. And it gives me a lot of confidence that we aren't in this stagnated mode of innovation. A lot of innovation is going to happen. There's a lot of garage-like activity going on, and I personally can't wait to see what's going to come out of the garage next. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for today's keynote. Our expo floor is now open. Be sure to come back at 4:30 for Daniel Kraft and a conversation with Simon Segars.